Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. We're on week 6 of my series on creativity, and this week we're talking about perfectionism, embracing evolution. Claiming perfectionism as a trait is an admission of your fear. From Leonard, to be a learner, you've got to be willing to be a fool. Before we go into this episode, I just want to share with you ways that I can support you. Firstly, as you're listening to this episode of Higher Energetic Resonance, you can deepen your experience of this by joining the mailing list so that you can receive an email with additional teaching points and resources for you to explore deeper on your own personal, spiritual and creativity journey. If you're someone that has always wanted to be heard in the world, whether that means your own podcast, social media content, speaking in public or speaking up in your life, I've created Your Awakened Voice for you, and this is my course using my holistic approach that acknowledges the intricate connection between your physical body, mind and spirit. This course empowers you to discover your voice, and if you're listening to this episode prior to the 14th of April, you can still use the code EASTER to receive the course for 50% off. Or if you're ready to work with me one-to-one, if you know there's a purpose, or maybe you're ready to work with me on a one-to-one basis, you can join my program where if there is a purpose to your life, my purpose is to support you. In particular, I'm speaking to you women over 40. I'll be guiding you to trust your intuition, rediscover your innate creativity, and use your decades of wisdom to design a purposeful life. The links to all of these offers are in the show notes. So to this week's episode, week 6 on creativity and perfectionism, embracing evolution. Starting with a quote from Brené Brown: "Healthy striving is self-focused. How can I improve? Perfectionism is other-focused. What will they think?" So let's first start by understanding perfectionism. Perfectionism is the relentless pursuit of flawlessness. And in the pursuit of flawlessness, we end up getting into a state of self-criticism. We're getting into such a state that we fear failure, that we then get into complete creative stagnation. Perfectionism is an illusion. If you're caught in perfectionism, you're setting yourself unrealistic standards, and then it's going to be robbing you of the joy and the spontaneity of the creative process. And see it as a natural and essential part of the creative and also the spiritual journey. And understand and recognize that there is beauty and authenticity that comes from discovering and to an extent embracing flaws, mistakes and the failures, and then seeing them as opportunities for growth and then also opportunities for learning. In those mistakes that we make, it then shows areas that you would need to expand, go into any deeper kind of learning, reading, exploration, education, and also understand that many things do come from these happy accidents that we have when we're just going for something, because you're not constrained by the rules and therefore you can play freely and discover. And I can add a personal anecdote to this. When I was younger and playing the piano and practicing the piano, and when I was starting out, and when you start out to learn an instrument, you'll start out learning very basic chords and very basic structures, just to get yourself attuned to what that sounds like, how to put your fingers, how to maneuver the keys, if I'm talking still about the piano. Chords are not just as clean and vanilla, if you want to call it, all these happy chords as a major chord. When it comes to actually going deeper into music, we'll find that there's minor chords, diminished chords, there's ninths, there's 11ths. There's so many different iterations and additions that you add to chord that will bring out different aspects of music and then get applied to different areas of music. In particular, if you listen to jazz and compare what jazz sounds like to a nursery rhyme, you can see there's a lot more going on in jazz than there is in your basic nursery rhyme. And when I was practicing and at the nursery rhyme stage, to continue with that, I would often put my fingers in the quote unquote wrong place for what I was trying to learn. And many a time what I was doing is actually discovering a minor chord or a ninth chord, discovering something that was a little bit more nuanced and a bit more sophisticated than what I was learning at my beginner level. What it showed me as well was a lot of the time I'd hear these wrong chords, or my fingers would be in the wrong place, but I liked what I heard. I needed to create a way of expressing and reminding myself that that's what I wanted to play, because I hadn't been learning enough or learnt enough to realise that I'd actually happened on a more sophisticated chord, and I was just having to write things in a way to remind myself of the wrong chord, the right chord played in a wrong way is what I was looking for. And what I was doing in making those elementary mistakes was happening upon a more advanced expression of music. Saying all of that to say this to you, that maybe the mistakes you feel that you make in your failures, in your process of trying to be perfect, are you actually inadvertently happening upon a more advanced expression? So what if you reframed failure and see it as a necessary and valuable aspect of the creative process? This is your market research. This is what is going to provide you with valuable feedback. This is also what's going to help you develop resilience emotionally, so that you're able to not get floored by any disappointment that you might feel because things aren't turning out the way that you want them to turn out, or people aren't giving you the feedback that you would like to have. You learn to hold and channel that disappointment into forward action, as opposed to deciding that you don't know what you're doing, you'll never be perfect, and not moving forward. Remember that you're evolving, you're finding out more about your unique expression, you're finding out what works for you, and then you're discovering more about yourself and finding out what is authentic to you by making the changes and the improvements that you feel are necessary. Understand that the creative process is messy, is chaotic, that there will be a lot of uncertainty when you start. It's like, what is the first move that you make? There might be a period of not really knowing where you are, where things are up in the air, and the discomfort of not knowing how things will turn out are just all elements of the journey. As you allow yourself to let go and surrender more to the process, let go of your perfectionist tendencies, you'll then get to the point where you access a deeper sense of flow, intuition, and creativity that then allows and opens yourself up to greater spontaneity and inspiration. And if I tap back into what I was talking about when I was learning the piano, if you then think about what it is to play a nursery rhyme, and then the free form expression of somebody who's improvising, we've all seen jazz musicians of all instruments, when they're improvising, that improvisation is exactly as it is. It's them just going into the flow and allowing whatever comes out to them to be expressed in that moment. And I've seen amazing improvisers where if your ears are tuned to it, you can hear the so-called mistake. But the way that they navigate out of that, they actually turn that so-called mistake, that moment of dissonance, that wrong note, they turn it into art. They travel through past it. If there's a band working together and one kind of hits a bum note, it's kind of like a joke to them, and they actually turn it into part of the piece. I've seen one musician make a so-called mistake, and then when it comes to another musician to then take on their part of the piece and improvise, has then replicated the mistake and turned that into art. Dropping that idea of perfection then allows progress, allows experimentation. You are open to just keep playing around with different iterations of your first idea. And then as you move on, you start to notice when things start to feel a bit more cohesive. But on the way there, through your imperfection, through your mistakes, I recommend you celebrate your small victories. Even when you see how you've moved from what you thought was the imperfect through to where you're going towards a better version, because perfection is a moving target. We never get there. Be easy on yourself. Cultivate self-compassion. Remember that you're human, and allow yourself, forgive yourself for mistakes. Turn them, like I said with the musicians, turn them into something amusing, and expect them. Every time that we try something new, we're going to suck. So expect them, but see that you're progressing and allow yourself to progress. So how can we overcome this ideal of perfection? Well, first, look at the rules and the beliefs that you have that are driving you towards perfectionism. Whose standards are you holding yourself up to? And is it fair for you to continue to do that? Is it possible? Are you also staying in an unrealistic societal one-size-fits-all way of thinking? Ask yourself, when you're comparing yourself to others, and especially if you're doing so via social media, remember that people usually only put their best stuff out there, even if they're doing crying videos, you know? When you're using what you're using as a benchmark for what is perfect, remember you don't know the extent to what somebody has gone to achieve that perfection if you're using other people. And evaluate your expectations. Honestly, evaluate your expectations and ask yourself, are you expecting too much of yourself? Are you educated enough? Are you equipped enough to actually achieve what it is that you're trying to do? Are you comparing yourself to somebody who has 5-10 years experience and you just started 6 months ago and expecting yourself to have the same results? You have to give yourself a fair chance when you're aiming for this perfection. The cure for your perfectionism is to just start so that you can see where these points for improvement are. And if you find yourself really stuck in your perfectionism, what is it truly costing you? Not making any progress is keeping you in your mind, keeping you in self-criticism. It's costing you your confidence, because you only gain confidence in the work that you do by doing the work. Is it costing you friends because they don't live up to your perfectionism ideals? Is it costing you colleagues if you're working in collaborative situations and your perfectionism is then not allowing people to align with you? Is it costing your own opportunities? Is it costing you money from not stepping forward? Are you holding yourself back because you're not there yet? The only way you get there is to move towards it. And as I said, allow yourself to move through all the things as you discover who you are. And who is the authority on what is perfect? Nobody is perfect. When you realize this and you start to see who you are, ask yourself, who is it you're trying to impress? And why do you think you need to impress that person? Without the good opinion of others, what are you thinking about yourself? And if you say to yourself that you're not starting because you're not good enough, how do you know? You may actually have a lot more going for you. You may be more knowledgeable and have more to get started than you realize. But that constant comparison, either with an ideal in your mind or with external people or situations, is going to freeze any kind of progress and not allow any creativity to come out from you. Knowing yourself is key to all of this. So it's to start doing deep work on discovering yourself and also healing and forgiving yourself for holding yourself back, and then allow your confidence to come through. And also I just want to touch on for a quick moment on spiritual perfectionism, the idea of being all love and light and good vibes only. This does feed into our creativity. If we're suppressing darker aspects of ourselves, that we're avoiding the messier parts, we're avoiding looking at our shadows. Think about varying different areas of people's expressions. Sometimes it's going into that darkness. It's going into that part that we don't want to see, that we don't want to explore, that is fuel and the impetus and the catalyst for so many people's expression in whatever way that might look like. Your work, the way that you could bring something out into the world, might be the seed of that, might be hidden in that dark place that you refuse to look when it comes to your spirituality. As you open that up, then you're able to infuse that, once you've integrated it within yourself, into everything that you are expressing, and that will fuel and come through in your creativity. Society has us striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection, and it's never existed now, and it creates a culture of fear of people even trying to start. And you're always going to be stuck in the beginning, even if when you start, you're at a high point and you find out that you have a lot of skills and a lot of ability. You can and you will always want to improve. It becomes addictive. You set up this challenge within yourself because you want to know what your limits are, and you get into the space and the understanding of failing forward. You now start to cultivate patience with yourself, knowing that if you're stepping into a new area, it's going to take a moment. There's going to be a learning curve. But as you repeatedly go through these learning curves, you're able to move through them much quicker. And you'll find that there's a lot of transferable skills and mindsets that come from learning to fail fast, learning to reject the idea of perfectionism. That means that you're able to be humble enough to feel that sometimes you're not going to be so good, but you'll get there if you just have the discipline and consistency to move through and be open to that ever unfolding process of working towards your own greatness. Take the pressure off yourself. Remember that you'll never be perfect. You will always be striving to a higher ideal. From Paul Arden, too many people spend too much time trying to perfect something before they actually do it. Instead of waiting for perfection, run with what you got and fix it along the way. Thank you for listening to another episode of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. Find out more about me on my website, carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. Find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, Carol May Whittick, and on Instagram, Casmic, Cazmick. Until the next episode, have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.